My daughter came home covered in bruises, her hoodie torn and her lip bleeding. My wife, Sarah, burst into tears. I said nothing, just walked into the kitchen, and from the bottom of the pantry, pulled out the butcher's cleaver the first hadn't touched in 20 years. 10 years of retirement. It seemed some people had forgotten the rules in Westgate. I was heading for the door when my daughter, Mia, grabbed my arm. Her eyes darted away. Dad, calm down. It was nothing. I just fell. Who did it? Nobody, really. Just then my phone rang. It was Manny, my old right-hand man, his voice tight with urgency. Jack, don't do anything crazy. Mia just took on the entire Northwood Prep basketball team by herself and wiped the floor with them. Jack O'Connell, you got some damn nerve. Letting your daughter lay a hand on my son? You think you're still the Tiger of Westgate? That was 10 years ago. Now you're just a washed-up nobody flipping burgers in a greasy spoon. I had just hung up with Manny, still trying to process the image of my daughter single-handedly demolishing a basketball team, when the diner door was kicked open. The man standing there was Donovan Price, decked out in designer clothes, a thick gold chain practically blinding me. 2 bodyguards in sharp suits flanked him. He was half carrying a kid who must have been 6'5", the captain of the basketball team, Braden Price. Right now, Braden's face was a mess of purple and blue, his lips split open. He looked a hell of a lot worse than Mia. But with his daddy here, he was suddenly the victim, pointing a trembling finger at my daughter, his voice cracking. Dad, that's her. She's the one who beat me up. Donovan Price's beady eyes locked onto me, burning with rage. O'Connell, who the hell do you think you are? You dare touch my son? You give me an explanation, right now, or I swear to God I'll burn this pathetic diner to the ground. My wife, Sarah, turned pale, pulling Mia behind her and apologizing profusely. Mr. Price, we are so sorry. Kids will be kids. We'll pay for everything, the hospital bills, whatever you need. Pay. Donovan scoffed, kicking over a stool by the door. You think I need your money? What I want is you old bastard, on your knees, apologizing to my son. Sarah started shaking. I quietly placed the cleaver back in the kitchen. Not because I was scared, because I didn't want my wife and daughter to see blood. I took a deep breath, forcing the anger down. Donovan, you really have no idea why your son got his ass kicked, do you? A whole team of jocks from a fancy prep school picking on my daughter, and you have the balls to come here. Braden, his neck stiff, yelled. Who was picking on her? She started it. Mia tugged on my sleeve, her head down, silent. I know my daughter. She wouldn't throw a punch unless she was pushed way too far. Donovan wasn't interested in the truth. He jabbed a finger in my face. I don't care who started it. All I know is my son got hurt. O'Connell, I'm giving you 2 options. Either you kneel, or I make sure you can't survive in Westgate another day. He stepped closer, whispering so only I could hear. Times have changed, old man. This is my town now. Donovan Price's town. Your so-called rules? They belong in the garbage. My fist clenched, knuckles turning white. 10 years. It had been 10 whole years since anyone had dared to speak to me like that. I looked at his smug face and said, slowly, all right. Seeing me back down, Donovan thought I was broken. He grinned, patting my cheek in a final act of humiliation. That's more like it. You got to know your place. Tomorrow, you bring your daughter to the hospital. You're going to get on your knees and beg my son for forgiveness. And you're going to bring a check for $20,000 for his medical bills. Then we'll call it even. Otherwise, I guarantee you won't see the day after tomorrow. With that, he and his precious son swaggered out. Inside, Sarah held Mia, sobbing quietly. I stared at the overturned stool and the fresh boot print on my door. My eyes grew cold. Donovan, you can do whatever you want. But you should never, ever have touched my family. And you should never have forgotten my rules. To the next day, my diner didn't open. The health department, the fire marshal, licenses and inspections, one after another, they showed up. One minute, they were claiming my flour supplier wasn't up to code. The next, they were saying I had boxes blocking a fire exit. They slapped a collection of violation notices on my front door. I had 3 days to comply, or they'd revoke my business license for good. My neighbors kept their distance, whispering and pointing at my diner. See, you don't mess with Donovan Price. That Jack O'Connell thinks he's still some kind of big shot. The world's passed him by. Serve him right. A fry cook trying to take on a real estate mogul? He was asking for it. The words floated over, sharp and cold. Sarah sat inside, her eyes red and swollen. She hadn't slept all night. Jack, maybe we should just apologize. Mia has to go to school. We can't afford to fight these people. I put my hand on hers but didn't say anything. Apologize? If apologies worked, I never would have had to carve out a place for myself in Westgate with my own 2 hands. Mia came out of her room. She'd changed her clothes, but the bruise on her cheek was still dark. Dad, Mom, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. She looked at the floor, her voice thick with guilt. This is not on you, I said, looking her in the eye. Tell me what happened. She hesitated for a moment before speaking softly. Braden and his friends. They're always picking on this kid in my class, Leo, stealing his lunch money, cornering him in the bathroom. I saw them doing it yesterday, and I just couldn't walk away. I understood. The girl has my temper. You did the right thing. I smoothed her hair back. We O'Connells don't start fights, but we damn sure finish them. But Dad, your diner, it's just a building. It can be replaced. Just as I said it, my phone rang. It was Mia's homeroom teacher. Is this Mr. O'Connell? This is Ms. Albright. Her voice was cold, devoid of any warmth. Regarding Mia's assault on students from Northwood Prep, the school board has met and decided to proceed with her expulsion. I'll need you to come to the school to sign the necessary paperwork. Expulsion? A cold dread washed over me, followed by a surge of white-hot fury. Ms. Albright, you haven't even investigated what happened. On what grounds are you expelling my daughter? Investigated? She scoffed. Braden Price's family has already provided the hospital report. A mild concussion and multiple soft tissue contusions. For a young woman like Mia to inflict that kind of damage, her behavior is exceptionally violent. This is an educational institution. We have no place for students like her. I was shaking with rage. And what about Braden and his friends bullying another student? Does the school just ignore that? That is a separate matter, which we are looking into. Mr. O'Connell, I suggest you come and sign the papers quietly. It will be better for everyone if you don't make a scene. She hung up. I gripped the phone, the veins on the back of my hand standing out like ropes. Donovan Price, you're not just trying to ruin me. You're trying to destroy my family. Fine, that's just fine. If you won't play by the rules, then I, Jack O'Connell, will have to teach them to you again. When I got to the school, the principal's office was crowded. The principal, the dean of students, and the teacher, Ms. Albright. Donovan Price was lounging on the sofa, legs crossed, with his bandaged son Braden sitting beside him, doing his best to look pathetic. The moment I walked in, Braden shot me a triumphant smirk. Ms. Albright pushed her glasses up her nose and slid a folder across the desk toward me. Mr. O'Connell, this is the official notice of Mia's expulsion. Please review it and sign at the bottom. I didn't even glance at the papers. My eyes were locked on the principal. Principal, I don't understand. My daughter stood up for a classmate who was being bullied. Why is she the one being expelled? The principal was a balding man in his 50s with the air of a career bureaucrat. He took a slow sip of coffee. Mr. O'Connell, let's not make baseless accusations. Our school has a zero-tolerance policy for bullying. It does not happen here. The fact is, your daughter assaulted another student without provocation. The evidence is clear. Braden chimed in with a sneer. Yeah, who saw me bullying anyone? The whole school saw what your daughter did to me. You little. I felt the rage rising and started to move. Mia grabbed my arm, shaking her head. Her small face was a mask of stubborn pride and hurt. Seeing her like that felt like a knife in my gut. When had my daughter ever been forced to endure such injustice? I reined in my temper, pulled out my phone, and dialed Manny. Manny, where are you? His calm voice came through the line. We're at the school entrance now, Jack. Good. Come on in. I hung up and offered the principal a slight smile. Principal, since you're all about evidence, let's take a look at some. The principal and Donovan exchanged a look of pure contempt. Donovan laughed out loud. O'Connell, who do you think you're kidding? What evidence could you possibly have? Did you round up a few bums off the street to back you up? Braden joined in. Dad, he's a fry cook. Who does he know? He probably brought the guy who delivers his burger buns. Ms. Albright frowned, her disgust for me obvious. Mr. O'Connell, I'm going to have to ask you to stop this nonsense and leave. I ignored them all. I just watched the office door. A few seconds later, it swung open. Manny walked in. Behind him were a dozen other men. They were all wearing different work uniforms. One had a jacket that said Johnson & Sons Plumbing. Another wore a shirt for A1 Electrical. A third had on a t-shirt for a local cleaning service. They looked like ordinary, hard-working guys. Their faces were weathered, their hands calloused. But the second they stepped into that office, the atmosphere shifted. A silent, heavy pressure filled the room, and the arrogant chatter died instantly. Braden's laughter caught in his throat. The principal's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. The smug look on Donovan Price's face slowly dissolved. He recognized some of them. 10 years ago, these were the men who had stood behind me. The men who had helped me write the rules in Westgate. Braden, still oblivious, sneered. What? You brought a bunch of plumbers. You planning on fixing the school's toilets? I didn't look at him. I just nodded to Manny. Manny pulled out a tablet and tapped the screen. A video started to play. The footage was from a quiet corner of the school building. It showed Braden and his teammates cornering a smaller boy, punching and kicking him. Then my daughter appeared. She ran forward, shielding the boy with her own body. The video clearly showed Braden's crew shoving her first. And then it showed my daughter, by herself, taking down all 7 or 8 of them. The video was crystal clear, the angle perfect. There was no question who was in the right and who was in the wrong. I looked at the principal and Braden, whose faces had gone deathly pale, and spoke slowly. Principal, is this enough evidence for you? Sweat beaded on the principal's forehead. He couldn't figure it out. That corner of the building was a known blind spot for the security cameras. How could I have gotten this video? Braden was panicking, pointing at the tablet and shouting, It's fake. That's a deep fake. Dad, don't believe him. Donovan Price's face was a thundercloud. He glared at me, his eyes spitting murder. O'Connell, you set me up? I smiled a cold, sharp thing. Donovan, this is called presenting the facts. So, are we ready to discuss your son's little bullying problem and the matter of him filing a false report against my daughter? I turned back to the principal, my voice rising. And you, principal, your school was ready to ruin my daughter's future without a shred of evidence. Am I not entitled to an explanation for that? The principal wiped sweat from his brow, his eyes refusing to meet mine. Well, Mr. O'Connell, there seems to have been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I scoffed, taking a step toward him. My daughter's reputation, her future, is nearly destroyed because of your misunderstanding. Tell me, how are we going to fix this? My crew stood behind me, silent, but their collective presence seemed to suck the air out of the room. These weren't thugs. They were electricians and plumbers, the ordinary men who keep this city running. But they were also the men who once stood with me, the ones who established the rules of Westgate with their fists. That fire, buried deep in their bones, never really goes out. Braden, terrified by the sheer intimidation, hid behind his father, trembling. Donovan, trying to maintain his composure, roared, O'Connell, don't you dare threaten us. You bring a mob into a school? You think I won't call the cops and have every single one of you arrested? I ignored him completely, my gaze fixed on the principal. I'm only going to ask you this once. Is my daughter's expulsion rescinded or not? And are you going to discipline Braden Price for his actions or not? Under my relentless stare, the principal finally broke. Yes, we'll rescind the expulsion. And Braden Price, he will face severe disciplinary action. Good. I nodded, then shifted my gaze to Braden, cowering behind his father. Now it's your turn. Apologize to my daughter and to the boy you bullied. Braden buried his face, refusing to speak. Donovan shielded him, his face contorted with fury. O'Connell, don't push it. My son will never apologize to you. Is that so? My voice dropped, losing all warmth. Donovan, I came here today to be reasonable. But if you're forcing me to settle this the old way. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. I promise you, you will regret it. Donovan's face turned purple, his chest heaving. He knew I wasn't bluffing. The tension in the office was thick enough to cut with a knife. Suddenly, Ms. Albright shrieked, This is outrageous. This is a gang. I'm calling the police. I'll have you all thrown in jail. I turned my head slowly to look at this woman who had been lying through her teeth from the very beginning. The police? I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Go ahead. Make the call. But I should warn you, once they get here, we won't be talking about a schoolyard fight anymore. My friends here, while they were doing a little maintenance in your school, found some interesting things in your pipes. Things like records of where the expired food from the cafeteria really goes. And maybe, just maybe, records of how much money Donovan Price paid you to target my daughter. The color drained from Ms. Albright's face. She pointed a trembling finger at me, her lips moving, but no words came out. You're lying. Am I? I guess we can let the police figure that out. I turned my attention back to Donovan Price. So, Mr. Price, do you still think I'm dreaming? Donovan's expression shifted from anger to panic and back again. He never imagined I would come so prepared, with video evidence and leverage against the teacher. He glanced at the silent, imposing men behind me, then at the curious faces of teachers and students peering through the office windows. He knew he had lost. Continuing to fight would only make him look worse. Fine, you win, O'Connell. Donovan squeezed the words out through clenched teeth. He grabbed Braden, yanked him forward, and gave him a hard shove. You little bastard. Apologize to Mr. O'Connell and his daughter right now. Braden stumbled, catching his balance. He looked up, his face a storm of resentment. But one look at his father's murderous expression and his courage failed him. He shuffled over to me, lowered his head, and mumbled something incoherent. Louder! I can't hear you. Manny boomed from behind me. Braden flinched and practically screamed the words. I'm sorry. I was wrong. To whom? I asked quietly. Braden finally turned to Mia, who had been standing silently by my side. Through gritted teeth, he said, Mia, I'm sorry. Mia just stared at him, her expression unreadable. I knew she was holding back a storm of her own, and I pressed. Braden looked confused for a second, then remembered Leo, the boy he had been bullying. I'll apologize to Leo, too. Good, I nodded. Donovan forced a smile that looked more like a grimace. Jack, old friend, look, the kids have apologized. Can we let this go now? This isn't over, I said, cutting him off. The humiliation my daughter suffered, the damage to my business, your threats against my family. Donovan, we're going to settle every one of those accounts. Donovan's face darkened, but he swallowed his pride. He took a deep breath and adopted a posture of utter submission. Jack, you're right. I was wrong. I was an arrogant fool. Please, let me make it up to you. I'll host a dinner for you, your wife, and your wonderful daughter to offer my sincerest apologies. As for the diner, I'll pay for all the damages. Double. No, 10 times the amount. He sounded so sincere, you could almost believe he was a changed man. I looked at him and laughed to myself. A snake doesn't change its scales. Donovan was the kind of man who would bow to your face and stab you in the back. But I didn't call him on it. All right, I clapped him on the shoulder like a magnanimous old friend. Since you're being so sincere, Donovan, I'll accept. You set the time and place. Relief flooded Donovan's face. Great. Fantastic. Tonight, the Sterling Grill, best place in Westgate. I'll make all the arrangements. He dragged his sullen son out of the office and made a hasty retreat. The principal and Ms. Albright used the opportunity to vanish as well. The storm had passed for now. Manny came up beside me, his voice low. Jack, you're not really letting him off that easy, are you? You know he's not sincere. I watched Donovan's retreating figure, my eyes narrowing. Let him off. Manny, have you ever seen a tiger let its prey go? I just want to see what other tricks he has up his sleeve. That evening, I took Sarah and Mia to the Sterling Grill. It was the most expensive steakhouse in Westgate, and Donovan had booked the largest private room. He was the picture of humility, bowing and scraping the moment we arrived. Sarah, Mia, I was completely out of line yesterday. Please allow me to apologize. He produced a velvet jewelry box and handed it to my wife. Just a small token of my regret. Sarah, unaccustomed to such displays, tried to refuse, but Donovan insisted. He then presented Mia with the latest iPhone. Mia, what Braden did was inexcusable. As his father, I take full responsibility. Mia glanced at me, and I nodded for her to accept it. Over dinner, Donovan spun a tale of his humble beginnings, a poor kid who built his empire from nothing. He lamented how his focus on business had led him to neglect his son, allowing Braden to become wild and arrogant. He delivered the performance with tears in his eyes. It was a masterclass in manipulation. If I didn't know the man, I might have actually felt sorry for him. He had played his part perfectly, apologized, groveled, paid handsomely. He had humbled himself completely. After the meal, he personally escorted us to the exit. Jack, my friend, from now on, if you ever need anything in Westgate, you just say the word. Our families were friends now. I just smiled and said nothing. On the way home, Sarah was quiet, lost in thought. Jack, that Mr. Price. Maybe he's not so bad after all. People wear masks, Sarah, was all I said. Mia was staring at her new phone, her expression unreadable. As soon as we got home, my phone buzzed. It was Manny. Jack, Donovan just left the restaurant. He made a call to one of his top guys. We were listening in. He said, he wants us dead before the end of the week. I wasn't surprised. What's his plan? He didn't give specifics, but he mentioned a name, Viper. Viper. My eyes narrowed. I'd heard the name. A ruthless gun-for-hire who had made a name for himself on the South Side in the last few years, known for taking on the dirtiest jobs. So Donovan was done playing games. I understand, I said, hanging up. My expression hardened. Donovan, you really chose the stupidest path. You want to meet your maker? I'll be happy to arrange the introduction. The next day, my diner reopened. The city inspectors were nowhere to be seen. The way my neighbors looked at me had changed, too. The pity and scorn were gone, replaced by a mixture of awe and fear. Everything seemed to be back to normal, but I knew it was just the calm before the storm. 3 nights later, it happened. I was in the kitchen, prepping for the next day. Suddenly, the front door splintered open. 7 or 8 masked men carrying tire irons and bats stormed in, smashing everything in sight. Nobody move. You move, you die, shouted the leader, a man with a jagged scar across his face, brandishing a machete. Sarah and Mia screamed. I immediately moved to shield them, my eyes fixed on the intruders. Within minutes, my diner was destroyed. Tables, chairs, the grill, everything was in pieces. The scar-faced man swaggered up to me and tapped my cheek with the flat of his blade. Old man, someone paid good money for your head. Shouldn't have pissed off the wrong people. He raised the machete high and brought it down toward my skull. The screams of my wife and daughter were deafening. My eyes narrowed, my body tensed, and in the split second before the blade fell, I moved. I didn't retreat. I lunged forward, closing the distance and slamming my body into the man's chest. At the same time, my right hand shot out, grabbing his wrist. I twisted hard. Crack! A sickening snap echoed through the diner. The man let out a blood-curdling scream, the machete clattering to the floor. His arm was bent at an impossible angle. It all happened in a flash. The other thugs were still processing what they'd seen when their leader was already down. Get him! Kill him! One of them yelled, swinging a tire iron at me. A flicker of cold fire lit in my eyes. Again, I moved forward, not back. I ducked under the swing, grabbed the man's shirt, and slammed his head down onto the thick wooden cutting board on the counter. Thud! The heavy oak met his skull, and he collapsed out cold. I snatched the razor-sharp boning knife from the magnetic strip on the wall. Its edge gleamed under the flickering lights. Everybody freeze. My voice was a roar, a thunderclap that shook the room. The remaining thugs stopped dead in their tracks, their attack faltering. They looked at their screaming boss on the floor, their unconscious friend, and then at the bloody knife in my hand. Their faces filled with fear. They couldn't understand how this quiet, middle-aged diner owner could be so lethally efficient. You work for Viper? I held the knife loosely, advancing on them one step at a time. They scrambled backward in terror. How? How did you know? Go back and give Viper a message. My voice was low, but each word was laced with ice. Tell him to stay put. I, Jack O'Connell, will be there within 3 days to collect his head. The thugs, tripping over themselves in their haste, grabbed their fallen comrades and fled into the night. The diner was a wreck, the air thick with the smell of blood. Sarah and Mia, emerging from their shock, stared at me, at the knife in my hand, their expressions a mix of fear and confusion. Jack! Dad! I turned, placed the knife back on its rack, and wiped my bloody hands on a towel. I looked at them, my face full of a regret I couldn't put into words. I'm sorry I scared you. I wanted to give you a quiet life, a life away from all this violence. But it seems some people just won't let us have it. I walked to the phone and dialed Manny's number. Manny, where's Viper's hideout? The line was silent for a few seconds before Manny's gray voice replied. Jack, are you sure? He came after my family. I cut him off. That's the one line you don't cross. Tell me where he is. Manny's side, the south side, the abandoned steel mill. Good. I hung up and untied the flour-dusted apron from my waist. I went into the bedroom and pulled a long, dusty wooden box from under the bed. I opened it. Inside, perfectly preserved, lay a simple, dark suit. And next to it, the weapon that had served me for 10 years, its cleaver blade still wickedly sharp. I changed my clothes and picked up the cleaver. Sarah and Mia stood in the doorway, their faces etched with worry. Dad, where are you going? I gently touched Mia's cheek and squeezed Sarah's hand. I'm going to settle some old debts. You wait for me here. When I get back, I'll make you my famous pancakes. With that, I opened the door and stepped out into the deep, dark night. Tonight, the Tiger of Westgate was crossing the river. Ate the abandoned steel mill on the south side. This was Viper's kingdom, a lawless territory in the city's forgotten underbelly. Inside the cavernous main building, harsh floodlights illuminated a chaotic scene. 100 men, armed with bats, pipes, and knives, were gathered, their energy a mix of adrenaline and greed. Viper, a man with a scorpion tattooed on his cheek and malice in his eyes, sat on a makeshift throne of oil drums. At his feet lay the scar-faced man whose arm I had broken. Useless piece of trash. Viper kicked the injured man hard. 8 of you couldn't take down one old man in a diner. The man cradled his shattered arm, whimpering in pain. Boss, that old guy, he ain't human. He's the devil. The devil. Viper sneered. We'll see about that. He had the nerve to say he'd come for my head in 3 days. The man doesn't know who he's dealing with. He stood, surveying his small army. Listen up, boys. The old man is on his way. Mr. Price has put up a reward. 10 grand for an arm. 100 grand for his head. The promise of money sent a jolt through the crowd. The men roared, waving their weapons in the air, their bloodlust ignited. At that exact moment, the massive, rusted steel door of the mill groaned open. S-C-R-E-C-H. The sound cut through the noise, sharp and grating. Every head turned toward the entrance. A lone figure in a dark suit stood silhouetted against the night sky. He held a butcher's cleaver in one hand. He stepped inside and began to walk toward them. I walked slowly, my footsteps echoing in the vast space, each one landing like a drumbeat against their hearts. The entire mill fell silent. 100 pairs of eyes, filled with shock, contempt, and greed, were fixed on me. I ignored them all, my gaze locked on Viper. Viper squinted, sizing me up, a cruel smile playing on his lips. So you're Jack O'Connell. You've got balls, I'll give you that. Walking in here alone. I stopped a few yards from his throne. How much did Donovan Price pay you to die tonight? Viper threw his head back and laughed. 2D? Old man, look around you. I've got over 100 men here. We could drown you in spit. I'll tell you what. Neil, put your head on the ground, and I'll make it quick. I didn't waste any more words. There's no point reasoning with a dead man. I raised my cleaver, the polished steel glinting, and pointed the tip directly at him. Viper, I'm giving you one chance. Break your own arm and get the hell out of Westgate. Do that, and I'll let you live. The smile vanished from Viper's face, replaced by pure, unrestrained fury. You still talking tough when you're about to die. Boys, get him, chop him into pieces. With a guttural roar, the dozen men closest to me surged forward, a wave of steel and violence. I took a deep breath, my focus sharpening to a razor's edge. Then I exploded forward, a bullet straight into the heart of the mob. 10 years of retirement hadn't dulled the blade, and some rules can never be forgotten. 9, the cleaver flashed. Blood bloomed in the stale air. The heavy blade in my hand became an extension of my will, a living thing. Every swing was met with a scream. Every chop left a man on the ground. There were no wasted movements, only the brutal economy of violence. A lifetime of street fights had honed my instincts, turning survival into a bloody art form. The first wave of thugs was cut down before they even knew what hit them. Broken arms, shattered legs. Their agonized cries filled the steel mill. The men behind them hesitated, their bloodlust turning to ice water in their veins. I didn't stop. I kept moving forward. My target was Viper. Anyone who stood in my way was just an obstacle. A man swung a pipe at my head from the side. Without looking, I reversed my grip on the cleaver and sliced across his wrist. The pipe clattered to the concrete, followed by a torrent of blood. Another came at me from behind with a knife. It was like I had eyes in the back of my head. I dropped low, the knife whistling over me, and drove my elbow backward in his gut. He crumpled, gasping for air, and didn't get back up. I was a machine of relentless destruction, carving a path through the crowd. No one could withstand a single blow. In less than a minute, 30 men were down. The rest of them were broken. They looked at me, this figure drenched in blood, a demon from their worst nightmares. The greed was gone, replaced by pure, primal fear. They backed away, their bravado shattered. A path, paved with bodies and blood, now stretched from the entrance directly to Viper. The smirk had long since vanished from Viper's face. All that remained was shock and disbelief. He finally understood what his man had meant. This wasn't a man. This was a monster. He watched me approach, cold sweat pouring down his face, his legs trembling uncontrollably. You stay back." He fumbled at his waist and pulled out a handgun, the black barrel aimed squarely at my chest. "Stop. I'll shoot. I swear to God I'll shoot." Seeing the gun, some of his men found a sliver of courage and began to stir. I paused, a mocking smile touching my lips. A gun. The last man who pointed a gun at me was 10 years ago. Do you know what happened to him? Viper's hand was shaking. "I don't give a damn what happened to him. Move one more step, and I'll blow your head off." I moved. The instant the words left his mouth, I flicked my wrist. The heavy cleaver spun through the air, a silver blur of death. Thwack! The blade embedded itself deep into Viper's gun hand, pinning it with tremendous force to the corrugated steel wall behind him. Ag! Viper's shriek was inhuman. The gun fell from his limp fingers. I gave him no time to recover. I crossed the remaining distance in a heartbeat, my hand closing around his throat, and lifted him off the ground. Viper's feet kicked uselessly in the air. He clawed at my hand, his face turning a dark purple from lack of oxygen. His men watched, frozen, not one of them daring to intervene. I stared into his eyes, my voice a blade of ice. "Now tell me, Donovan Price sent you, correct?" "He's at the docks. Warehouse." Viper choked out the words. "Good. I got the answer I needed." My grip tightened. Crack. Viper's head lolled to the side. His body went limp. I dropped him like a bag of garbage. Then I walked to the wall, pulled my cleaver free, and turned to face the terrified crowd. From now on, the South Side belongs to me. Any objections? The steel mill was utterly silent. I walked out, cleaver in hand, leaving behind 100 men on their knees, trembling in the shadow of the tiger. Next, Donovan Price. 10 Westgate Docks, Warehouse 3. Donovan Price paced back and forth, anxiously awaiting news from Viper. He was surrounded by his most trusted bodyguards, all of them seasoned professionals. Outside, another 20 hired guns lay in ambush. He was confident that his trap was foolproof. Jack O'Connell was walking into his grave. "Boss, it's a call." A bodyguard handed him a phone. Donovan saw Viper's name on the screen, and a wave of relief washed over him as he answered. "Viper? Is it done?" The voice that answered sent a chill down his spine. "Donovan Price, are you ready to die?" Donovan felt like he'd been struck by lightning. The phone nearly slipped from his grasp. "O'Connell, how? Where's Viper?" "He's already gone. Now it's your turn. I'm outside your warehouse. I'll give you 3 minutes to come out. Or I'm coming in." The line went dead. Donovan stared at the phone, his face ashen, a cold sweat drenching his shirt. Viper and 100 men. Gone? Just like that? What kind of monster was Jack O'Connell? "Boss, what do we do?" a bodyguard asked nervously. Fear gave way to a desperate, cornered animal rage. "What are you afraid of?" Donovan shrieked. "He's just one man. We have guns. We have numbers. Nobody moves. Today, either he dies or we do." He tried to rally his men, but the tremor in his own voice betrayed his terror. 3 minutes passed. The warehouse door remained shut. I was done talking. I took a few steps back, then ran forward, planting a powerful kick on the sheet metal door. Boom! The heavy door buckled inward with a deafening crash, the lock bursting from its frame. I kicked it again. Boom! The door flew open. I stepped inside, my bloody cleaver held ready at my side. Inside, Donovan and his men were waiting. Seeing me there, alone, seemed to restore a sliver of his courage. Okono, you really are a fool. You walked right into my trap. He waved his hand. Get him. Kill him. $5 million to the man who kills him. The hired guns, their eyes red with greed, charged at me with a roar. I sneered, meeting them head-on. It was another slaughter, but this time I was more ruthless, more final. These men were Donovan's last line of defense. I wanted him to watch, to see his last hope being systematically dismantled. The warehouse became a symphony of screams and steel. In the cavernous space, the sounds of carnage echoed off the walls. In less than 5 minutes, all 20 men were lying in pools of their own blood. The warehouse had become a slaughterhouse. Donovan and his few remaining bodyguards were huddled in a corner, shaking so violently they could barely stand. I walked toward him, my footsteps slow and deliberate. Each step was the sound of approaching death. No. Stay away. Please stay away. Donovan shrieked, so terrified he wet himself. Jack, Mr. O'Connell, I was wrong. I'm so sorry. Please spare me. I'll give you anything. Money. 100 million. 1 billion. He fell to his knees, slamming his head against the concrete floor, snot and tears streaming down his face. I stood over him, looking down at the pathetic wreck of a man. Money. You think the rules of Westgate can be bought and sold? I raised a cleaver. The moment you threatened my family, you sealed your fate. In your next life, try to remember the rules. The blade fell. Blood sprayed across the floor. Donovan Price's head rolled to a stop, his eyes wide open, frozen in a mask of eternal terror. I wiped my blade clean and turned to leave. Behind me, Donovan's bodyguards were paralyzed with fear. I left them alive. I wanted them to be messengers. I wanted them to tell everyone in Westgate what they saw here tonight. I wanted them to know that the tiger was back, and his rules were law again. The sky was beginning to lighten when I returned home. Sarah and Mia were waiting for me in the living room, their faces pale with worry. When they saw me walk through the door, the tension finally broke. I took off the dark suit, put on my apron, and went into the kitchen. Dad, you... Mia started to ask, but trailed off. I smiled. You two must be hungry. Just give me a minute. I'll make you some pancakes. The first rays of morning sun streamed through the diner windows, illuminating the clean, quiet space. Everything was calm again. But from that day forward, everyone in Westgate knew. The tiger was back, and he had only one rule. You don't touch his family. Ever.